I noticed it the same week my manager stopped raising her voice. It wasn't anything dramatic. She just got quieter. And somehow, that quiet made people listen harder than her yelling ever did. I work in logistics, coordinating shipments for a mid-sized distribution company outside Columbus. It's not glamorous work, but it's steady, and steady was all I wanted after a few rough years. My days were predictable: spreadsheets, phone calls, the occasional fire to put out when a truck was late or an order got mixed up. I liked the routine. Routine meant nothing surprising was going to happen to me. My manager, Denise, had been running our department for about 6 years. She was the kind of person who used to fill a room the second she walked in: sharp voice, quick opinions, always the loudest one in any meeting. I used to think that was just her personality. Some people are big, some people are small, and Denise was big. Then, around the start of that spring, something shifted. I couldn't tell you the exact day. It was more like noticing a color had changed in a room you'd been sitting in the whole time. She started asking questions instead of giving directions. She started pausing before she responded to things, a full 2 or 3 seconds, which doesn't sound like much until you're the one waiting for someone's reaction and they just don't react right away. It was unsettling in a way I couldn't explain. I remember thinking, is she mad at me? Is something going on with her? I found myself replaying our conversations afterward, trying to detect some hidden meaning in her silence. What made it stranger was that everyone else in the office seemed to be responding to her differently too. People who used to argue with her in meetings were suddenly more careful with their words. People who used to interrupt her didn't anymore. It was as if her quietness had rearranged the whole room around her, and nobody had said a word about it out loud. I asked a coworker, Priya, if she'd noticed. We were in the break room, and I kept my voice low, like we were discussing something we shouldn't be. She's different, I said. Ever since March or so. Priya just shrugged. She seems calmer to me. Maybe she's in therapy. That answer didn't sit right with me. It felt too simple. I'd been in therapy myself, a couple years back, after my divorce, and it hadn't made me quieter. If anything, it made me more willing to say what I actually thought. So I kept watching Denise, the way you watch a puzzle you haven't solved yet, half expecting the picture to snap into place if you just stared long enough. The thing that finally cracked it open for me happened on a Tuesday, during a meeting about a shipment delay that had cost us a client relationship. It was the kind of meeting that used to turn into a shouting match, or at least a very tense hour of finger-pointing. Denise used to lead those meetings with fire, cutting people off, assigning blame fast, needing to be the one who fixed it in front of everyone. This time, she didn't do any of that. She let the meeting run almost 15 minutes before she said anything at all. She just listened. People explained what went wrong, one department pointing gently at another, everyone a little defensive, a little nervous. And Denise sat there, writing things down, nodding occasionally, saying almost nothing. I kept waiting for the moment she'd step in and take control the way she always had. It didn't come. Instead, near the end, she asked one question. Just one. What would need to be true for this not to happen again? That was it. No blame. No frustration. Just a question that made the whole room shift its focus from what had gone wrong to what could actually change. People started offering real solutions instead of excuses. The tone of the meeting completely reversed itself in about 90 seconds, and I don't think most people in that room even noticed it happening. I noticed, because I'd been watching her so closely for weeks, trying to understand what was different. After the meeting, I stayed behind to grab my notebook, and it was just the two of us in the room. I don't know what made me ask, but I did. Can I ask you something? You've been different lately. Calmer. Is everything okay? She looked at me for a second, like she was deciding whether to give me the polite answer or the real one. Then she gave me the real one. "I read something a while back," she said, "about how people mistake control for strength. I used to think being strong meant being the loudest person in the room, the one who reacts fastest, who has the answer before anyone else does. And it worked, for a while. People listened to me because they were a little afraid of me." She paused, tapping her pen against the table. "But fear makes people quiet in the wrong way. It makes them agree with you instead of think with you." I realized I wasn't actually getting better answers out of people. I was just getting faster silence. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to keep going. So I started doing something different. Whenever I felt that urge to react, to jump in, correct someone, prove I already knew the answer, I made myself wait. Just a few seconds. Long enough for the other person to keep talking, long enough for my first reaction to pass and a better one to show up behind it. It felt unnatural at first. Like holding my breath underwater. But the strange thing is, the longer I waited, the more people actually said. And most of the time, they ended up saying exactly what I would have said myself, except now it was their idea instead of mine. They took ownership of it instead of resenting me for handing it to them. That sentence stuck with me for a long time after I left that office. I'd always thought of confidence as something loud, the person who speaks first, who fills the silence before it gets uncomfortable. I'd built my whole idea of strong people around volume. The ones who talked fast, who had opinions ready, who didn't seem to hesitate. And I'd quietly believed the opposite about myself, that my tendency to sit back and think before speaking was some kind of weakness, a flaw I needed to fix if I ever wanted people to take me seriously. But watching Denise, I started to wonder if I had it backwards the whole time. I started paying attention to that gap, the space between something happening and my reaction to it. At first it was uncomfortable, almost physically uncomfortable, like resisting the urge to scratch an itch. When someone said something that irritated me, my old habit was to respond immediately, usually with something a little sharp, a little defensive. I started trying to wait instead. Just a breath. Just long enough to ask myself what I actually wanted to happen next, instead of just reacting to how the moment made me feel. It changed more than I expected. Not just how people responded to me, though that changed too, but how I understood myself. I noticed how much of my old reactions had come from a kind of quiet fear, a need to prove I wasn't going to be overlooked or dismissed. The fast responses, the need to have an opinion ready before anyone asked for one, that wasn't confidence. That was anxiety wearing confidence's clothes. The real confidence, I started to realize, was being able to sit in that uncomfortable gap without rushing to fill it. Trusting that you didn't need to win the moment immediately. Trusting that people would eventually say what needed to be said, if you gave them the room to get there. A few months later, I was in a meeting of my own, nothing important, just a scheduling conflict between two teams, and I caught myself doing it without thinking. Someone said something that would have made old me jump in fast with a correction. Instead, I waited. I let them finish. And by the time they were done talking, they'd already answered their own concern, without me saying a word. Nobody in that room noticed anything unusual happened. That was the strange part. The people who benefit from this the most never seem to notice it's happening to them, which I suppose is exactly the point. It isn't a trick you perform on someone. It's a discipline you practice on yourself, and the effect just shows up quietly in the room around you. I think about that meeting with Denise often, how something as small as a pause could rearrange how an entire team behaved, without anyone consciously deciding to change. It made me question a lot of assumptions I didn't even know I was carrying. About strength. About who gets listened to and why. About how much of what we call confidence is really just discomfort we haven't learned to sit with yet. I still catch myself wanting to react fast sometimes. Old habits don't disappear just because you understand them. But now, when I feel that urge, I remember Denise's question, not the one she asked the room, but the one underneath it. What would need to be true for this to go differently? Maybe nothing needs to be true except patience. Maybe the loudest voice in the room was never actually the strongest one. It was just the one most afraid of the silence. I wonder how many people are still waiting for someone to notice that the quiet ones were the strong ones all along.